All right. Zach, welcome. Thank you for coming to talk to everybody about this. As I mentioned in my email, and I'm sure you mentioned to people too, with rising costs all around, with inflation, with things that came out of the pandemic, people are just looking for places to save money, get better deals, right? And insurance is a place where, with the right coverage and the right person to help them, they can get the best value for their money, right?
Correct. Yep.
So a little bit about Zach. Zach Hauser owns his own insurance brokerage. And so what he does is he shops for the best coverage and the best price for what his clients are looking for. Zach also is a football coach, for those who may not know Zach personally already. And we had people just submit some questions in advance. We didn't get a ton because we don't advertise this very far out, but we did get some. And so right away, I'm going to have Zach talk about these questions, and then we'll go ahead and have him elaborate on anything else he thinks is really important for people to know when they're shopping for their insurance. So take it away, Zach.
Yeah. So a little bit about me, just kind of expand on that. So I've been in the insurance industry for, oh man, it's been about 5.5 years now. It's felt like a lifetime, but been able to help a lot of people along the way. I've seen most of every situation that a person can go through, as far as loss of a home, where it takes the entire house and they've got to rebuild, versus the small little claims that windstorm comes through and takes a couple of your shingles, and we got to deal with that. So I've seen most of everything. Obviously I haven't seen it all. No insurance person wants to see every type of claim out there. That's a scary place to be, but throughout the years I've seen enough and know enough that I'm able to help answer these questions for people. So as far as a base homeowner's policy, there's a few different types of coverages that are out there. There is what's called an ACV, or actual cash value policy, or replacement cost. Now I can get a little bit into the weeds, but I'll keep it pretty base level here for everyone. Actual cash value, it just takes the depreciated cost of whatever the loss may be. So if it's a roof, if it's 10, 15 years old, obviously a roof depreciates over time as they get older. So with the actual cash value policy, it will take the depreciated cost away from the actual payment that you will get. With the replacement cost, it will replace that roof as it were new, and give you a brand new roof without that depreciated cost being
The
factored in.
depreciated value, just to kind of elaborate on that, if I get a bid and it's $20,000 to replace my roof, and I am replacing with similar like in kind, but my roof is 10 years old, and the roof I had before was only a 20-year roof. I had just bought the cheapest roof. I only get half of that 20,000 covered.
Correct. Yeah, there's a certain amount that the insurance company, says, okay, the roof will depreciate at this value over time. So they'll take that times how many years the roof is, and they'll take that away from the actual cost.
That's why they need to know the age of your roof when they're creating your insurance policy.
Correct.
Unless you do full replacement, then it's less.
Yeah, and actual cash value policies are less in cost than replacement cost. So I mean, it might look good and feel good that you're saving that much money on that type of policy up front. In the long run, it does not make too much sense to do that, because as we know here in Minnesota, there's a lot of things that can damage our roofs, whether that be snow, ice, wind, hail. You name it, we have it. So having that actual cash value policy is something that I don't personally write myself, for the people that I
It's
work
just
with.
not a good thing for you to advise people to do.
Right. Yep. I mean, I what I do is I let you know the options, and I mean these are are your policies that you have, and ultimately in the end it's your decision. But I advise you along the way of what I would recommend doing as far as coverage and whatnot. So
Okay, so when they're looking at basic coverage, they should be hoping for replacement.
exactly. Yep.
That's the key word they're looking for.
Yep.
If they want basic coverage, but the minimum they should be getting is replacement, in your expert opinion, to
Yep.
make sure.
Yeah. Always be looking for a replacement cost policy.
Yep. So then the next question is, what's usually excluded in these basic policies?
So in every homeowner's policies, earthquakes are excluded, and floods are the most basic ones that are excluded. If in a basic policy with no endorsements, which is what we'll get into next, backup of sewer and drain through pipes and toilets, that's usually excluded. Flood, people may not realize, but if you do have a walkout basement, where your sliding door is, if any water comes over that threshold, that is considered a flood. So if you do have a walkout basement, and you are in a flood zone, or are worried about, hey, I've got a river or a stream behind my house, and we do get a lot of water, it might come through. We'll look into some flood coverage for that. But yeah, if any water comes over that threshold, that is considered a flood, quote unquote, to insurance companies. So understanding that is very important if you do have that type of basement. But
So that does then get into endorsements. So one of the first things you mentioned was earthquakes. We don't really have that here.
Mhm.
However, if somebody wants that, I bet the insurance company would take your money.
Right.
More importantly, and as an agent, I see this a ton as well, flood insurance. Because when a lender goes to do a mortgage for a home, they always need to know if it's in a flood zone. And then that determines if the buyer will be required to buy flood insurance in order to get a mortgage on that property. And so that's a big one to me. I see that all the time. And that's definitely something, FEMA sets rates for that. You could talk more if somebody wanted to get into the weeds on how those prices work. It's not really very flexible.
Yep.
And then the other part you were talking about, which is a more recent pain point in the last 5 years, I would say, in my business, is sewer line coverage. Particularly because some cities are now requiring sellers to have their sewer lines checked out before they can put their house up for sale or transfer the property. And so when you haven't been paying attention to that section from the street to your house the whole time you've lived there, you might be in trouble when it comes time to sell. So how would a sewer line endorsement work for homeowners?
Yeah. So we typically call it buried utility lines, as an endorsement, and endorsements are just add-ons to the base policy. So extra coverages that you may or may not elect to have. That's what an endorsement is. But the buried utility lines is anything that's provided by the city that goes from the street to your house. That is not covered under a base homeowner's policy. So that includes any sewer drains, water, gas, electric, all that kind of stuff. So let's say if you have a sewer line that's running to your home, and a tree is growing right next to it, and the root goes into the sewer line and it gets damaged. And the city has to come out, they dig up your front yard, make a nice mess, replace the line, and then they hand you a bill for a couple $1,000s. Well,
I haven't seen them under 7 in a
so
while. Cheapest dig up on a sewer line I've seen has been 7. So what's the coverage cost? Because compared to 7 grand, I feel like lots of people would really benefit.
yeah, so if you're comparing the coverage cost to the actual bill that you'll get from the city, it's pennies on the dollar. Maybe $50 to $100 a year to have it added on. So I mean, if you're looking at, let's say it's $100 a year, minimum is $7,000. I mean, you're looking at 70 years of paying for that coverage, to have that, added benefit onto your policy. So,
Sounds like a good one to me. What other endorsements do you think are important for people to consider and popular? I said my two.
yep. So I mentioned one before is the backup of sewer and drains.
Okay.
So if you have a floor drain in your basement, if you have toilets in your basement, any toilets in general, you might run into a time where those back up, right? Especially if you have a septic system that doesn't have any one-way valves, those do like to back up and come into your house. So having the water backup of sewer and drains coverage covers in those times, covers damage to your property as well as to the house itself. So if it hits any drywall, or damages, let's say if you've got like a TV or anything like a couch downstairs, it will help take care of replacing your property in those.
Perfect. So that makes me think a little bit as we come into spring. I'm backing my brain up to water, water, water now. A lot of people will get water in their basement, and it's not from a sewer backup or a flood like a pond or river rising. It's just from the freeze thaw melt that we get,
Mhm.
whether it's it cracks their foundation and then the water starts coming in that way. And you don't see it because it's, if the basement's finished, it's behind a wall. What kind of coverage would that be?
So it ultimately depends on where it comes from, right?
Okay.
I mean, it's a very specific case by case basis. So there's really not one overarching answer that I can give to anyone. It's really specific to how is that water getting in there, right?
Right.
And based on that, that's where the coverage can come into play, or it might not be covered under a homeowner's policy. So it's really a
Okay. Right.
specific case
So
by
foundational
case.
stuff might not be covered at all.
In some cases, I've seen it where it's not. It's considered that flood, because it's coming over, through the foundation. So it's,
Right.
yeah,
So really, really go deep if you're worried about water in your basement on endorsements. Get them
right.
all.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, it's I'm thinking spring right now, even though it's like 0 degrees today. And these are all the headaches I have in spring with home buyers and sellers is wet
Mhm.
basements. And that becomes kind of an emphasis for me then. Um, but now that I've beat everybody up over their basement, let's move on to a townhouse. A lot of townhouses don't have insurance, or I mean, basements. Some do. A lot of condos, same thing. So when somebody owns a townhouse or a condo, they don't get a full homeowner's policy. It's usually called like an HO6. What
Mhm.
other names should we have for it?
Yeah, you know, condo policy, townhome policy, they all fall under the HO6 policy name.
Okay.
Um, so how that how those policies work for a house for home coverage, um, it covers everything, right? Roof from everything outside all the way in. When we look at a HO6 or a condo or townhome policy, we're looking at the studs in. Um, is what you're covering on that policy. Included in that policy is what's called loss assessment. And what loss assessment is the homeowners association should have coverage for the entire building. So a siding, roof, anything like that.
Master policy.
Right, exactly, a master policy. And if let's say a big windstorm comes in and it takes part of the roof, well, in the HOA, they can actually come after you as the part owner of that building. They can come after you for part of that damage. So that loss assessment is coverage that pays the HOA to fill their deductible because they're coming after you for those damages. Even though you don't own the roof per se.
Well, you own it, but you don't cover it.
Right.
It's
You're
in the
covering it via the loss assessment coverage in your HO6 policy.
so then I've heard it explained by other associations simply as with our HO6 policy, we have a deductible that when there is a major loss, a roof, a siding claim, windows in a tornado or something, that they have a deductible per unit, and that deductible that they have is what the homeowner would be responsible for, in addition to any deductibles they have on their HO6 policy. If, say, the roof blows off and the water gets inside, right, and now they have sheetrock and flooring and stuff that needs to be covered. So the HO6 is going to cover that interior stuff, and the homeowners are believing the homeowners in policy that the association carries, that master policy is going to cover the roof, and then they find out that they're getting dinged with a big fee from the association.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, in the cases that I've heard, it's been what they call their deductible on the HO6, or I mean on the master policy.
Right. Yeah, and typically those are $25,000-$30,000 deductibles on those master policies. So I like to make sure that, if I'm working with someone who does have a townhome, that their loss assessment coverage takes care of that entire deductible, just to be safe.
Yeah.
You never know if they're going to come after one or all. So if they come after you for some unseen reason, we want to make sure that we're taking care of all of that for them.
So education is key on what's going to be covered and what the risks are.
Yep.
Another one that I get a lot, and maybe I can explain it better than you, or maybe you want to take a stab at it, but why do I need home insurance and a home warranty, or what's the difference between the two?
Yeah, so I'm not very privy to the warranty.
Yep.
So I mean, I can kind of let you speak on the home warranty. And
Well, so the biggest thing that home warranty companies do is they cover things like appliances, right? And then a lot of them actually have add-ons to their warranty policies for things like sewer. The backups more so, like if the toilet backs up, because they're going to call it a plumbing coverage, right? And so they really do work in complement to the homeowner's policy. They are going to be, if your furnace breaks down, because you're not insuring the furnace, you're a structural insurance there. And the warranty company is more of a mechanical insurance. I like to explain to people just that way, very basically. Think about this as your structure, your homeowner's policy, and your warranty is on the mechanicals of your house. That's the biggest or easiest way to describe it. Now, just like every homeowner's policy is not created equal, home warranties can vary greatly. They're a little bit more like medical insurance than home insurance and how they do coverage, in that with a home warranty, they're going to probably have preferred providers and deductibles that you have to meet each year before they pay anything, that kind of stuff. It's set up a little bit like health insurance. So sometimes people will go to the warranty companies, and sometimes the homeowners will decide to get like a service plus plan through their utility company, because they're more worried about their major functions like their furnace. So that's all going to be another consideration of home ownership to protect you. Again, homeowners policies are mandated for everybody that has a mortgage. Home warranties are not mandatory, but they are additional coverage for major breakdowns. So just definitely things to consider. If you're finding out from Zach that there's something your homeowner's policy isn't covered, give me a call and we'll see if there's a warranty company that does it for you.
And how long do home warranties last for?
You have to renew that coverage annually. If you get a service plan, like I said, for like your furnace or whatever through a company, that's monthly. It's usually on your bill. Some of them do quarterly, but warranties have to be purchased a year at a time. Usually you get a discount rate the first year you own the house. Just a basic small house is going to be like $550 the first year. Sometimes, as long as we don't have too much inflation, they'll give you that rate in subsequent years. Usually it goes up after that. Bigger houses that have 2 furnaces, that kind of thing, those policies start more at $750 because there's a lot more mechanicals and plumbing and things to cover there. But again, it's kind of a peace of mind thing, like the sewer coverage, like more than $100. Uh, However, if your warranty is covering that, then maybe they don't need it through you. But if you let your warranty expire, then you're going to want to go back to your homeowners and get that kind of coverage, especially if you've got big trees, like you were mentioning, or some of those things. So the idea is you really just need to compare the things you want covered and where to get that coverage. If it's going to be Zach finding it for you through a homeowner's policy, or I connect you to some warranty companies and you get it there.
Perfect. Well, I've got some questions that I received as well. So the big one that I saw was, where do you see the housing market going in the next couple of months? And why?
Let's talk about the housing market.
Yeah. And why would it be smart to go now versus kind of riding this wave out?
Okay, so I'll back up for a second and just let you, for your viewers that maybe don't already know me, my name is Sarah Marinan. I hold my real estate license with Angle & Volkers. They are a brokerage here in the Twin Cities, and I'm an advisor for them. So we do things a little bit differently there. We meet as an advisor group a couple times a week, and we really put our brains together to solve problems for our buyers and sellers. Some other brokerages do similar things, but we are very intense about it. So we want to advise appropriately. And what that means is that when somebody says, should I buy now or wait? There's not a yes or no. It's going to be, let's talk about your situation. Because if your credit's bad and you don't have down payment and you've got some things to work on, it might actually be better for you to wait, even though we're forecasting that housing prices and interest rates and stuff are going up. Because one of the things that I didn't get as a question, but I'm going to ask you anyway, is how credit affects the rates you get for things. If you need some credit repair before you buy to help you get a lower interest rate, just throwing this out there, these are not real rates. If the average good credit rate right now is 4%, and you have a really low credit score, and so you're shopping around and all you can get is 4.25% because they consider you high risk, then fixing your credit over the next 3 months, 6 months, year, and saving up for a down payment, because that also affects your interest rate, will actually lower the interest rate for you enough to offset waiting. And then that interest rate is long term. When you get an interest rate, unless you refinance, which comes with a lot of expenses, you're locking in that rate for a long time. So if it's about interest rates that's making you scared, all the other agents are going to kill me because they're all saying buy before the rates go up. And I'm saying only if you're ready. There's just, there's some other things too. The competition is really hot right now. And if we can do something to put you in a better position for competing, you're less likely to overpay. Because if you are a risky move to a seller, you're going to have to offer more money to really tempt them to take your deal than if you look like a really solid buyer. And then, right? Like, if you think about that from a home seller's perspective, the other part about that is, sellers are often buyers too. And should a seller buy right now? Well, I mean, it's really hard to get another seller to accept an offer that's contingent on your home sale. So that's a whole different scenario we have to work through. I've got a webinar coming up about that. Zach will share it with anybody who asks him. But that's kind of important, is to really know your situation and don't let the emotion of the news and the market drive your decision.
That's great.
I don't know if that was the answer you were expecting, but
yeah,
but it's good advice, right?
Yeah, I think the one key thing that people will get to know about us is, we're more of educators in what we do. It's part of how people understand the inner workings of what they're getting into, right? we don't talk to them about it, then they just kind of go in blind and see the one number, and that's all they focus on. You know, things do come up. Questions are good when you ask us, but
Yeah.
we want you to be educated enough to know what's going on in the moment, so that there's not that source of panic, right?
Right.
We want there to be calm, clarity, in a time of high stress situations. So having that education portion, come from your realtor or your insurance agent is very important. So.
Well, and on that note of education, I'm kind of addicted to education. Every time I see I take this class and learn about this, I'm like always ready to click, yes, me, sign me up. But the thing is, when you make informed decisions, you have more leverage, right? And leverage helps you to be more confident about your deals. And I can answer confidently about helping people make decisions because of my experience and my education. And so if there are agents out there in your life that are newer, particularly, they don't have experience going through all these things, like I said, in the last 5 years with the changes of the cities and the sewer systems and those things, there is education for them out there. And it's, I'm sure, going to be like mind-blowing to them that they did not sign up to have so much ongoing education when they thought they were getting this real estate license. But things change so fast. And I became very committed to education early in my career when I switched from commercial to residential 10 or 15 years ago, whenever that was, because I wanted to know everything. I really wanted to help people understand their choices, not having it be a sales situation. I always have hated it that it's called a salesperson's license in Minnesota and other places in the country. I don't want to sell anybody crap. I want to help them make a good decision. I want them to be happy long term and tell their friends that they felt good about their decision. And so that led me to the Residential Real Estate Council, which used to be under a different name. We won't confuse anybody. And they do a broad spectrum of education that's at a higher level than what agents get through the state or whatever. And they end up having the most experienced, because in order to get your designation with them, you have to have experience under your belt. But then they require a certain amount of additional education up front, and then each year to keep your certified residential specialist designation. And I love it. I take so many classes from them constantly every year. As social media marketing is changing, how can I best sell a house? What's the best way to advertise a luxury home versus a townhome? There's just so much to know. And I don't want agents to feel overwhelmed by it. And yet I think they need it. So I have over the years been volunteering with the organization, and this year I'm actually president for Minnesota's Residential Real Estate Council, meaning I help agents connect, top agents, because they need that experience to join, connect and find education so that they can continue to be the best 2 to 5% in the country, depending on what state they're in. There's only a small number of agents that meet the criteria to be a certified residential specialist. So just know that most people with that designation are really committed to education and experience. And it's something that, if you're out there shopping for a home with a friend or family member or whoever you chose to do this with, bring it up to them. If you're not shopping with somebody, I'd love for you to call me. But the idea is just, I'm not just in this for me. We need to be better as an industry, and there is education for agents out there. So please encourage those that you love to do it. Those agents are obviously also then the most successful in the industry because of their training and education and background. So that's like hearing Zach tell me about all the new things he's always learning and different companies he's picking up and learning about to help provide the best services for his clients. So I think that's how we ended up connecting in the first place, just really digging each other's educational and experience model. And as a coach, who better?
Right. It's part of what I do every day. So.
Yeah, it's amazing. Any other questions that we should address before we get me gets any more long-winded?
Yeah. I think the part of one of the questions that, we had sent out, for people, wondering why your insurance rates keep going up. Why every year do I get a bigger bill from my insurance company? Why
And
does
for
that
those
keep
that hung around, here's your answer.
so your homeowner's policy will more than likely go up every year. Plain and simple. That's just how it is with the cost of inflation. I know it sounds like a canned answer, but it's true. With inflation and building costs, always increasing to keep up with inflation, people have to go to, to Home Depot and get the lumber. If there is a part of your house that needs to be done or redone because of a claim, that's where they get their supplies. Right, is from these big box stores. Most of the time. Sometimes they'll get them from a wholesaler, but if it's a small job, they'll find the materials.
Well, and the
So
cost of the licensed professionals is going up. We've had a little bit of a labor shortage in some of the major trades for a while, so that's been in high demand and costing extra.
yeah, so I mean, just keeping up with you know where the building cost of your house is. That's why your homeowner's policy is going up. Because with the replacement cost policies, right, we're not setting one solid number to replace your house, right? That cost to rebuild that entire structure will go up because with inflation and everything like that, that's where the money needs to go is into that replacement cost coverage for you. So
Right.
every year that you're not just being billed more for the same coverage, that coverage is actually increasing as well. So there's
One of
a
the other things we promised
correlation
people
to.
we would tell them is how to save money on a
So
policy.
yeah, so I mean, you can shop your insurance
Yep.
anytime you want. The longer that you're with a company does help. Some companies do look at credit-based insurance as well. So there are a few of those that are out there that I deal with. There are some that don't that I deal with. So it depends on the company, and you can shop your insurance at any time to find a better rate. And what I've seen is if you do look at your insurance every year, we can definitely go and review that for you to make sure that you still do have enough coverage on your house, or if there's any other gaps or concerns that I find during that process.
Right.
Um, and what I've done since I've opened up is helped people get more coverage for less money. Sounds
Like
weird,
a
but
broker.
yep,
Yep.
it sounds weird, but it there are companies out there that do have very good pricing models. And sometimes you just may not be with that company just yet, but we'll find them for you. Um, and we've
Well,
helped a
and other
lot of
things they
people
can
do
just
that.
bundle, right? Like if they have you shop for a company to insure everything, sometimes they get a multi-policy discount.
Right. Yep. Usually bundle it in with your auto insurance. That's where the biggest discount comes in. And the good thing is with being a broker, as long as you have your auto insurance and your home insurance just with my agency, you will still get that multi-policy discount. Now it won't be even if there's with two separate companies. Um, so obviously you get a bigger discount for having them both at the same company. But even if you don't, and we find a situation that makes sense for you as the client to have them with two different companies, you'll still get that discount for having both of those policies with my agency. So,
I think there are some people out there that don't realize that they can separate their policies, and some people that don't realize they should have their policies together. So I felt I needed to bring that up.
yep. Yeah, sometimes it makes sense to have them with the same companies. Other times it makes sense to have them with different companies. It just depends on your certain situation that you're in. So
Yeah. Uh, Was there any other questions we missed on that list, Zach?
Um,
So the best rate when you're shopping, I was waiting for you to ask me that one. When you shop for a new house, the mortgage lender also requires you to get a binder, an insurance binder
mhm,
before the closing. And if you know that you're shopping for a house and Zach is your insurance broker, you should tell him up front. Because then anytime you find a new house and maybe you're worried, like, is this one going to need extra sewer coverage? You can run it past him and say, hey, man, what do you think? Can I get a decent policy on this? There are some areas, I can't say anything about it, but there are some areas where insurance coverage is higher due to historical damages in the area.
mhm,
uh, and so that's something to consider too. Maybe you are shopping in two cities that are next to each other, and one in general has a lower policy rate than the other. That might affect your initial purchase decision. Now that can always change, not guaranteeing any long-term savings with that, but I have noticed that when I help buyers shop in certain areas, certain insurance companies are much cheaper than others in those areas. And sometimes if they just move over a zip code, their policy is a lot less as well. So knowing that the home you buy and the location will also affect your rates.
mhm. And typically newer homes are cheaper to insure than older homes. So it's might sound a little backwards, but newer houses, typically cost less to have a homeowner's insurance policy on than older houses.
Well, and a lot of that goes to things like old wiring and plumbing and things
Mhm,
that could add to, defects that in a storm are going to cause bigger problems, right? For example. Um, and on that note, that's the other answer to my question. Some homes are virtually uninsurable due to their age and condition. So if you are thinking about buying a fixer upper, this is making me have flashbacks of my old foreclosure days in real estate, where I came home smelling like mold and many other things after showing homes. Um, that's another thing you want to talk to Zach about. Like, can you even insure a fixer upper? How bad does it have to get before you can't even insure it? Because in certain areas, there's old knob and tube wiring in houses still. And sometimes they will require you to put money in escrow, it's called, meaning set aside money with the lender to get all that knob and tube wiring ripped out before you're allowed to occupy the home in order for it to be insured. And so just keeping, that in mind as the market gets tight and people start lowering their standards. I'm seeing people take risks on some things that really should have more thought.
mhm. Yeah, and there are specific companies that do policies for people who are in that world.
Yep.
Right, if you have a very risky home that you want to insure, there are companies out there that I do have access to that will be able to take that on.
Yep. And Zach can help you with like umbrellas if you're gonna have a bunch of people helping you rehab a house, like friends and family. Let's say somebody gets hurt doing it. I know I've heard of that. A couple brothers went in on a project a few years ago and it turned into a horror story. So I did not end up helping them. I did not like their buyer shopping model, but the agent who ended up helping them when I followed up with them just sold them something that uh, ended up in a family feud. So one of them got hurt on the job. They didn't have coverage. That person couldn't go back to work the next week because they were hurt from rehabbing this home, and it can break relationships. So also getting coverage for all of those things if you're going to take on those projects. If you're going to have parties at your house, there's umbrella policies for covering those guests.
Hmm.
There's so much you can insure these days when it comes to your home.
Yeah, different events and stuff like that. If you are hosting, make sure that you talk to your insurance agent, you know, months in advance if you are planning to do those. We can find coverage for the 24, 48 hours that weekend that you're hosting those. So,
And pools,
mhm.
that would be an
Pools,
endorsement.
trampolines, the fun toys that you can have in the back of your house.
Yep. So,
Having the right, that's the liability coverage of your homeowner's policy. So we
all
can get
right.
more detail
Well,
on that. Give me a
yeah.
call and I'll talk
We
here.
hope that we really answered everybody's questions. We started off with the write-ins because we feel like people who took the time to write in questions to us really deserve to get their answers right away. And
Mhm.
then, of course, went on to our normally scheduled topics, but we will still answer more questions if you have them. So please, Zach, is it best to email, call, text? How should they get a hold of you?
Anyway, Facebook message, call, text, email, send a pigeon. I'm available in all forms of communication. So, um,
Awesome. So what phone number should they text you at?
yep. So best phone number for me is 612-578-3853. And then my email is just Zach, ZACH at hauserins.com. HAUSERINS.com.
Awesome.
And they can
Uh,
also see the
yep.
website as well for all of that info and write me a
Just
message
Google
on
me.
through the website. So it's
I,
very easy to
I
find.
I jokingly tell people to just Google me all the time. I'm like, just type in Sarah Marinan Realtor, and I'm like 900 first results because I've been doing this a while, so I'm on every website out there. But my cell phone is 651-964-0289, and it's Sarah with an H, SARAH at callsarahfirst.com. Make sure you spell out the word first, and you'll get to me. So. All right. Thank you, Zach.
Yep. Thank you, Sarah. We will do this again soon.
We will.